Well, hello and welcome to the YA podcast. We are so excited to finally get this thing off the ground and bring this digital resource to you as we just sit down on a semi-regular basis and talk about young adult ministry life.
Sure.
So I'm Ryan Keaton. I'm the Emerging Generation Specialist here at the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board, and my job is to serve you, the local church, and helping you reach young adults in your community. My role is just to come alongside of you, whether you are on staff at a church or you're just a volunteer or whatever you may be. I just want to be a resource to you to be able to help you start thinking young adult minded. And so we're excited that this podcast can hopefully be a resource to just talk about young adult ministry life, to be able to come alongside of great practitioners of young adult ministry and get their viewpoints. Some of the future episodes will have some people who are in the mission field, in the daily grind, just giving their insight and their expertise of years of ministry. And so we're excited to be able to get this thing off the ground. I am joined today by Lorenzo Baylor.
What's going on, man?
The kid from the county.
The kid from the county. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be, coming together on this. This is kind of something we've been talking about for a little minute. And here we are.
Here we are. We're doing it.
Yeah. I am ministry assistant to Ryan Keaton. And, I'm his partner in crime, so to speak. So if he gets in trouble, I was there.
That's right. We're doing this together. And so we are looking at creating more tangible resources that we can put in the hand of the local church.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Not creating it for the local church, but creating it out of the local church. I serve weekly in young adult ministry as well. So I'm in the battlefield, on the battle lines with you weekly, trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get young adults to come and be a part of what we're trying to do.
Same. At my church, I serve with the young adults as well. And it's interesting that it's now, growing up, I don't think I've ever heard the term young adult. I'm not going to say I never heard it, but it wasn't like a thing. But now it seems across a lot of different ministry platforms that you're starting to see a more emphasis on young adult focused things to talk to people within a specific kind of generation and age gap. So, I'm excited for what will come out of this.
Yeah, and I think that, man, it's such a testament to the direction and the leadership of the Tennessee Baptist Mission Board to see the need of having a position like this.
That's right.
To reach young adults. Very few states have a specific young adult focus. And so the fact that, well, one, through the generous gifts of you, the local church, through the cooperative program and through the Golden Offering for Tennessee Missions, we're able to do something like this.
That's right.
You're able to have a staff member like me who may not actually be on your church staff, but maybe you can't afford to have somebody on staff specifically for young adults.
Yeah.
And so churches coming together provides a resource like me where I can come in free of charge and be able to just rub shoulders with you and help you think through strategies or whatever it may be. And so, man, it's Tennessee, be proud that we have this focus because we have a little over 7 million residents right now, and over half of those would fall into this young adult category. And so they're there.
Wow.
Close to 4 million young adults in our backyard. And so
that's crazy.
We got to do something with them.
We got to do something with them. Yeah, and I think, coming into 2023, we're already halfway through the year, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
I think now is the time for to be thinking about, how do we engage with that kind of generation. For years, I was listening to watching a YouTube video the other day. This comedian, he said, when did it used to be forever we were the next generation, but now we're just right now.
Yeah, we're the generation.
We're just the generation. So, we can no longer be thinking in terms of how can we help this next generation. But it's right now. What we're doing right now. We're making decisions right now. We're paying real mortgages. We're paying real taxes. We're paying real. We're giving real tithes and offering. We're growing families. We're having kids. I know some people that aren't too much older than me with grandkids.
Yeah.
So we're right there.
So whatever generation you fall into listening to this podcast, whether you're an elder or builder or boomer or Gen X or millennial or Gen Z, or maybe we even got some Gen Alphas listening to this.
Gen
I don't
Alpha?
know. The new one.
That's the new one?
That's the kid, yeah. So
How old are they?
it depends on who you talk to. Some say 2010 to now, so they could be up to like 13. Some say 2015 to now, so.
It blew my mind. My roommate told me he was born in 1999, and I said, man, you weren't even alive when Michael Jordan took his last shot in Chicago.
I know. It's
wild.
We were, in my young adult service last night, we were talking about 9/11, and none of them in the room were even born when that happened, much less being able to like remember what happened during it. And so that is the people that we're trying to reach right now.
That's
so
the
it's
people we're trying to reach.
millennials, Gen Z. Is the bulk. Millennial will be the largest bulk of our young adult ministry, but you do have some older Gen Z who are in there. And so how do we reach them? How do we connect with them? If you're in that older generation, the value system, the worldview is changing. You have the nations coming to not only America, but to Tennessee.
That's right.
And so how can we engage? And so some of these resources that, let's say we're already putting out. And so we've been kind of working in the intangible for the last 2 years in just building networks, building communities, building just relational resources that it's kind of hard to put a finger on what are we actually doing and just building relationships.
Yeah.
But here in the next couple of months and years, we're wanting to put tangible resources of, well, one, the book that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit, Winning Young Adults in Our Harvest Field, is a digital and a physical resource that you can get. And we'll be talking about that in a few minutes. But also like the Young Adult Conference that we did April of 2023, and we're going to have coming up again in 2024.
That's right.
As an annual type thing where you can bring your young adult ministries too, or young adult leaders can come and get ideas, or you're just trying to figure out how can I be a more young adult friendly church, and so you can come and kind of be in the room and just kind of see what people are doing so that you can start doing that. And so these are some resources we're putting out. Things like online articles through the Baptist and Reflector or whatever it may be. And so these are things that be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
And then if you don't already have connection to, you could email me at rkeaton, Keaton, at tnbaptist.org. And we'd love to be able to just connect with you in maybe that intangible. Maybe you just need a friend or a relationship. And so that's what we're trying to connect and do those things.
Well, speaking of the Young Adult Conference, it was the first one that we had done.
That's right.
Within this space. And can you just talk a little bit about your experience with that and pulling that together and what you thought about how it went, and if you're listening to this and you were there, also I want to also plug our social media, the Young Adult Instagram, YA Instagram, and Facebook pages. So we want to hear from you on those as well, and just get your feedback on just. But I would love to know what you thought about how that went, and just talk a little bit about that first experience. I know leading up to it, me personally, I had a lot of investment into it. Like I really, 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 really wanted it to go well, and because it was the first of its kind, it was the first one that you had done, and it's kind of just almost like a long. Even though you've been in this role with TBNB for what, a year or so now?
Yeah, almost two
years.
August of 23. So whenever you're listening to this, August of 23 will be 2 years. So.
2 years. So it was kind of the first big thing that we had done as a as a ministry
specifically
for this role. And
Yeah.
like, how do you feel? Like, what were your thoughts now that we're maybe 3 months removed from it?
Yeah.
What did you think about it?
Well, first off, shameless plug for our social media at Young Adults TN. So
There you
at
go.
Young Adults TN, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. So make sure to follow us there. But yeah, so I think for the first one, it was just a great start. You have
Yeah.
to start somewhere.
Got to
And
start somewhere.
I'm real big on the idea of starting small and growing strong. But really, the small was several people. We had over 30 churches join us, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of young adult ministry leaders and their teams.
Yeah.
And so, you don't know who's going to buy into the vision and what they're going to be about. But we had some great speakers, just kind of from the main stage. And Scott Dawson, who is an evangelist out of Birmingham, and he just shared the gospel and shared on how you can share the gospel. He gave a gospel call. We had Sean Pillay, who is out of Olive Baptist in Pensacola with Ted Traylor, and he talked about mobilization. And Sean, for many years, served through NAM, mobilizing church planters. And so he just talked about how you need to reach your city. And that's the heartbeat of what we're doing here in winning young adults in your harvest field, of just how can you specifically reach the people in your community.
Yeah.
And then we had some great breakout leaders who talked about very practical things. And so all of the feedback I heard was very positive. We're excited for the next one that we're going to do, tweaking some things and being a little more bullet laser focused. The first one was almost kind of like the spaghetti model of just throwing a whole bunch of things against the wall and hoping something sticks,
Right.
which is not usually a very productive ministry model, but just us trying to figure out, what are the questions that you, the local church, is asking, because I don't want to be answering questions that people aren't asking.
Yeah.
And so just us identifying, what are the questions out there?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that we talked about in preparation for that conference was how there wasn't really anything of that kind geared towards young adult. You got your passions, which is more youth focused, and you got other conferences that do things, but to have a conference that's specifically focused on young adult and young adult life, we hadn't really seen much in that space by way of events of that kind. And so for me, I loved, obviously, my friend Andrew came and led worship, Andrew Holt of the Belonging Co., and it was powerful, it was moving, and we had a great time. And I loved Scott and I loved Sean and their messages and what they brought. But my favorite thing about it was just kind of seeing those 30 churches that were represented kind of come together and just be in fellowship and relationship. And for me, one of the things I think that we can suffer from as in the Big C church is a lack of collaboration amongst, what in Tennessee alone, how many Baptist churches you think there are in the state?
There's somewhere around 3,200 churches, give or take a few, that cooperate with us as part of the Tennessee Baptist Convention Network.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm hoping that this podcast will help shine a light on that. Just being in the room with like-minded people helps you see, I'm not the only person who struggles with this, or I'm not the only person who has these questions, or, this thing is working well for us, and look, it's working well for others as well. And so it encourages you, it gives you different viewpoints, but just being in the room with like-minded people, or even people you want to start being like-minded with. Maybe you're not there yet, but just being in the room, it just inspires you and it helps you.
And shout out to Thompson Station Church and Avery Bell and
for hosting us
and just what they're doing over at Thompson Station. They have a great ministry, period. And then, but Avery Bell is also in the midst of trying to build his young adult ministry, and what they're doing over there, doing some innovative things and doing some things that are really having an impact. So I was happy to partner with them. And one thing I love, and this is kind of how I was raised, I come from a sports family. So I've always loved the team aspect. I love collaboration because I feel like that's how you get the best results and you get the best ideas is through collaboration and team. So what I love is the idea of being able to connect pastors, youth pastors, young adult pastors with one another to be able to, obviously, yeah, you definitely want to know somebody's walking the same kind of journey as you are, but even somebody that may be doing some things that you aren't doing that you can glean inspiration from is, for me, worth it to have a conference like the YA conference that we just did,
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited over the course of the next few weeks and podcasts that we're going to be releasing. We're going to be talking about this new resource that we've just put out called Winning Young Adults in Our Harvest Field. And so this book, if you've not gotten a copy of it yet, you can find it online or you can contact us and we'll send you a physical copy. Mm-hmm. But it's really a sequel to Winning Our Harvest Field. That was a book that Mark Miller, the discipleship team leader, with the help of 7 local church pastors, put out during COVID. Mm-hmm. And it focuses on 7 specific principles, and they just kind of talked about, through the lens of their own local churches, these 7 areas of prayer, people, relationships, gospel, love, discipleship, and multiplication, and how each one of those areas matter, and then how specifically through the lens of each of those, how you can reach the people in your community. And so we took those same 7 topics, which I don't think anybody's going to argue that those matter, right. But how can we, now through the lens of young adult ministry, focus specifically on those topics? And so we got some young adult practitioners from around our state and one from outside of our state in PJ Dunn with the Georgia Baptist Mission Board to talk about these 7 different areas. And so over the course of the next few weeks, we're going to have them with us on the podcast, kind of giving their perspective and an overview, but just kind of an introduction. We could give statistics. We could sit here for the next 30 minutes or hour and give you numbers of why you should be young adult focused. And we've talked about, the however many million in Tennessee that we have. But you probably know specifically, you listening, the need of passing the baton to the next generation.
Yeah.
You may be in a church and you look out around and you see a lot of young families and you see a lot of babies and kids and you're like, man, I want them to succeed in this next phase of life.
Yeah.
I want them to have the same advantages that I have. I want them to be able to, their children and my grandchildren to have the same church experience or better that I had. Or you may be in a church and you look out and you see a sea of gray.
Yeah.
And it can be discouraging because you're like, what is our church going to look like in the next 5 or 10 or 20 years if we don't become more intentional of reaching young adults in our community?
Yeah.
You may even look out across your community and say, you know what? We're not in a quote unquote young adult town. And so how do we engage those around us?
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that the conversation here will, again, not necessarily help you create a young adult ministry per se, but how can your church be better young adult friendly?
Yeah.
Just creating that community of senior adults in multi-generational discipleship, pouring into people under them.
Yeah.
What are the currents, the kind of streams of culture that are underlying in your community? And are you aware of those? I feel a lot of times pastors, church members, they're unaware of these almost undertows of current that happen in their community. And they wade into those waters and then they wonder, why am I drowning?
Yeah.
And it's because they don't see that undertow that's pulling them.
Yeah.
And so how can we identify what are those currents in our community that are positive, that we can readjust ourselves and go and share the gospel through those lenses?
Yeah.
And then what are negative undertows that we can start helping other people not fall into those traps? Because Satan is trying to set snares.
That's right.
And trip us up and discourage us and distract us and pull our attention in many different directions. And so your worldview may be very different from the young adults in your community, but instead of just continually being in some kind of generational war or culture war, how can we biblically, that's gospel-centered, start having relationships that could lead to them coming into a relationship with Christ, hopefully entering into a Bible-believing church. And again, it's more than just your local church, but being a part of the body of Christ.
That's right.
And so this book and the different authors that we're going to be talking to over the next few weeks is hopefully very practical. Again, we don't want it to just be theoretical. We want it to be actual. These are tangible things that I can start thinking through, and these are things that I can do. And so I just want to, at the very beginning of this podcast, give a word of encouragement to you of whether you're in what you would consider a large church or a small church, or whether you would consider yourself in a large community or a small community. You are a part of the bride of Christ, and there is no such thing as a small outpost of the body of Christ. Every single church is important, and your specific church and you specifically have such a wonderful opportunity to reach young adults in your community. God has equipped you, God has called you, and so you can do it. So don't be discouraged. Again, whether you look around and you see many or you don't see many at all, today's the day. You can't ride off of the successes of the past. You have to today be intentional, because where there is no vision, the people perish. Right. And where there is not continual adjustments and tweaks of your strategy, complacency will set in. And when complacency sets in, lack of growth comes.
That's right.
And so continue to join us, like, share, follow us on all of the social media platforms and all of the podcast platforms.
Give them that social media platform one more time.
So it's at Young Adults TN on Facebook, on Instagram. Reach out to me, R. Keaton, Keaton, at tnbaptist.org. I'd love to connect with you and your church. Lorenzo, thanks so much for joining me today. This podcast is engineered and produced by Colby Mike, so shout out to him for putting this together. And again, we're able to do this because of your generous gifts through the cooperative program and through the Golden Offering of Tennessee Missions. So thank you for your faithful giving, and continue to give, because your dollars are going to reach lost souls for the gospel. So be on the lookout for the next episode to drop. Go out and win Tennessee today for Jesus. We'll see you next time.